everybody, Sluggernaut here. I just wanted to make a video on something before I kind of drop this project for a while. Partially it's for me to be able to reference later, but I thought it might help a lot of you out there that are trying to make a sort of similar style game or really a game with this sort of functionality in it that I'm going to discuss. And that functionality is essentially the ability to sort of define the idea of a type of um, enemy or class or projectile or whatever, and then have 100 different types of those and be able to sort of change out how they're represented. Um, so let's come up with a quick example. I just came up with an amazing idea that you guys have never heard of. Let's say the game would be called Pocket Monster. Maybe we'll call it Pokemon for short. And in this game, we're going to have 151 different types of Pokemon. But I don't want to make a I've got an idea for a Pokemon called a Charizard, right? And I don't want to make a Charizard class, a Gengar class, a Squirtle class, and so on, right? I want to be able to make one Pokemon class and then be able to just change the data and move stuff around as necessary and balance everything in one nice, let's call it a table of data that then changes that Pokemon when one is spawned. And so, how can we do that? How can we get away from making a completely different child class off of every one of these classes? That's a perfectly fine way to do it. If I was only going to have 5 different types of these Pokemon, I'd probably just make 5 different blueprints or 5 different, specific Pokemon classes, and they would have a base class that defined most of their stuff, and then we would just make those 5 types. But I don't want to do that. I want 151 types. And so, how can we do that? So, the main way we're going to do that is through something called the data table. And this is just an inherent data type or something you can make in Unreal Engine. This isn't part of a plugin or anything really weird and special. This is just built into Unreal Engine. And you would do that by, well, let's just go to this asset location and right click. And I want to say, actually, I don't know if you know this, but if you right click and you just start typing, it'll come up. And yeah, so we can make a data table, and you just have to have a type ready saying, I want a data table of these things. And so, how do I define one of these things? So, what we would do is right click, go to blueprint, and then we can create a structure or an enumeration. Actually, I don't know if you can use an enum, so not the enumeration, sorry, never mind. Something else. So, I would create a structure and define it and be able to put stuff in here that defines all of this stuff. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show it to you in C++. But just know that you can do the same thing in Unreal Engine without C++. Why am I showing it to you in C++? Because I have it already done in C++, and that's how I do it. So in this case, if we look at these data table details, right, when I selected that I want it to be a job info type, we will have this tab in the data table where I can kind of look at that type. But it doesn't really like break anything out for me or really help very much, just so you know. But if it was defined in blueprints, it would be a little bit different, and you can go to that structure and edit it. It would show you this right here and all that stuff. So anyway, blueprints might be a lot more helpful. Maybe I should have done that, but too late. So I've got a job info here, and job info for me, right, is just, I would almost always suggest starting with a name, and then from there sort of define, well, what does my type have and what does it need? So it probably, like right here, the job name for us for Pokemon would be, Squirtle. And we would just go on from there and say, okay, a Squirtle has, whatever it needs to have, right? And so let's like find, right, its base speed. We could even make an entire like stats class if we wanted to make a different struct for those stats. Where's my stats? There we go. So, right, F unit stats, and let's figure out where I'm even like using that later on in here, right? So for my level up info, we might go over that in a minute, and then right in job info, we have our base stats, and so we don't have to list out all of the stats in here individually, right? We can still use other data types after that and then define them. So hopefully this isn't too confusing so far. Let's go back and check out how that might work. So I've got my different types, in my game here, right? This is a healer, and this is a bat, which apparently Who knows what it's an adventure. I know it looks like a bat, but it's actually an adventurer and all of that. So let's kind of talk about how that might work. So I'm able to say, right, for instance, that you have where's the static mesh at? There's the icon, the static mesh, right? So I can just define, hey, you're going to have some static mesh, and it can be null, but I can come in here and change the static mesh to anything I want. So you can see how extremely fast and efficient this would be when I have any sort of issues. And I can come in here and just say your base stats, right? You start off with 100 HP, and you will start off with, whoops, 87, and so on. And so you can see how balancing your game would become very quick and very simple. So this is sort of the gist of it, and this is where we're going to start. But before we go too far, if you're like, I already have 87 classes, do I even want to go convert this so that my balancing would be easier? I'm going to say probably yes, depending on how far into development you are. The only reasons you would say no, and if you're like, well, what are the issues with this? And this is where I'm going to say actually potentially no. The issue is when I finally do make a class that uses this job data, that inherits this job data and has a job data in it, right? So find usages, and we are going to have, so all of our units are going to have a job info and use that job info. So let's take a look at that. And the issue is going to be, okay, so on begin play, I check my job info that's set, and I get that row from that data table. And well, now we've got an issue. I'm just a unit. You're a unit, you're a unit, and you're a unit, but we just have different job infos. How do we do something different? Well, I'm a Charizard, and I have Scratch, and you are a something else, and you have Bite, right? I don't have Bite, you have Bite. Well, how do I use Bite, and how do I determine that Bite is available and everything? Well, um, what you're going to have to do is sort of have information in your gameplay that essentially looks through what your object has and then sort of makes that move available. My game here is an auto battler, and I'm going to show you why this kind of comes up with an extra crutch or crux. So let's do something more complicated where it really becomes an issue. Take damage. So I've got a function here called take a hit, and it's not implemented, so it's not the one I'm looking for. Take turn. Oh, take a hit's in the actual blueprint. So maybe this will help. So if we go look at our player base, and player base is made based off of unit base, and I've got a lot of test code in here, so give me one moment. And then, unit base is the C++ implementation, and so take damage comes into play, right? So what you're going to have to do in here is essentially determine when I'm taking damage, right? Let's say I'm a ghost type and you're something weak to ghost type, right? How does that come into play when we want to make that determination? Right here is where that's going to have to happen. You're going to have to come in to one take damage function, determine what type of damage is coming in, right? So this incoming damage, what type am I? Do I have some sort of resistance against that? Or maybe it does double damage, it's like anti-resistance or something. So you're going to end up with these huge functions that are really janky, in my opinion. And there's not really a good way around it that I've found that sort of says, okay, without having this massive function. And the only way around it I've really found, and it's still not great, right? When we want to take a turn, right? So my guys are sort of taking their turns automatically. So they have to determine what kind of a job am I, and then I need a take turn for that type of job. And then so this guy has take turn generic, but take turn healer, tries to find, in my case, right, the lowest health friendly that's within a certain range, and then tell them that they're getting healed. and then they would have to determine, okay, well, I get extra healing when I get healed, so you're healing me for 5, but I double my healing when I get healed because of whatever perk or thing I have. So it gets really, really odd. So this is where I think this sort of class, the base class that is, or I'm sorry, has a job, in our case, we're not using is a, we're using has a, uh, really just blows up. Now, it does kind of help me keep the code in all in one place. I know if I see something funky happen with one of my characters, I just need to know what type is he, and when should that have been happening, right? And then I can go fix it, and it's all going to be in one class. So it's kind of up to you to determine. Since I did this from the get-go and I knew this is how I wanted to design my code, I'm not going to have a major issue. I'm going to know exactly where all of my code is for each character type, or each job type in this case. Um, and it does allow me to do a lot of other things. Since I am controlling each of these pieces as the same type, there is a little more power that does come in with that. So our trade-off kind of comes back again. So if I take this character here and I say, well, you know what, I'm going to change your job. You're not an adventurer for my test here, you're a fighter. Well, how did I just do that, right? I was able to just turn him into a fighter immediately. It just did all of his job swapping by looking at the data table, determining what a fighter is, what static mesh they have, and kind of recreating this actor for me. And so let's take a look at that real quick as well, because that's one of my favorite tricks, and it's just a little odd. So actors have an editor-only function called post-edit change prop. Whoops, post-edit change prop. Let's just go straight to that function. Why doesn't it want to go to that function for me? Whatever. So forget it. It's defined in the class as post-edit change property, and that's just an override from the actor class. This isn't something I made up or made happen myself. And what we do here is essentially anytime a property is being changed, this is, again, editor only, this isn't something that's going to happen in your game, we determine if it was a data table row, and then if it is a, right, is it a data table row, and is it a job data table row, because I have other data table rows in here, or maybe I don't, but I could in the future, right? So I have other data tables that I reference. But anyway, so moving on. So when I change this data table row, in this case, right, I could do this for any property. I could make it where when I changed the, fighters faction to enemy, right, I read that in here. Um, right, I read the the property changed event. I'm so sorry. The property changed event, property name, and if it was faction, right, do this thing, and then else if it is, a new job info, do this other thing. There is sort of a trick here and an issue here if you're kind of seeing it, that the actual property name is row name because it's part of the data table row, and I can't change that, right? I don't own that. It's not unit data, even though that's my property and my type. So what I'm able to do here is say, well, actually, so we're going to change. What I want to do is create a whole new unit, and I'm going to spawn the actor deferred, change all of its stuff, and then finish spawning the actor, right? And so I've completely destroyed the actor that I had that I'd clicked on and changed this job, and then I've created a whole new one that has all the stuff that I want in it. Now he's this new job, he's this new type, he has these abilities, and then on his begin play, he's going to figure out what kind of moves he has and all kinds of stuff, right? And right, my dudes, have different levels that give them different perks and all sorts of different things. And if you want to know more about how I did this, man, just get in the comments and ask me, and I'd love to explain further exactly how I sort of designed all of this code and made all of this work. It's a bit hairy, and I feel like it's a little funky to try to make one big video on, but maybe it's something I should do anyway. And this was something here that I couldn't get to work. I know that there's a way to tell the editor to select the actor that we have just created and deselect the actor we've destroyed. So the problem is that this kind of changes in the middle of this function. we are about to destroy this actor. So we haven't destroyed this yet. Um, this is a little odd, and I don't understand why this was crashing. So it's one of the things I'll get back to later. Just know that when I do, where did he go? Where did my actor go that I had? Did I kill him? Did I mess something up? Anyway, I don't know what happened. Oh, gotta look at that later. And then this is the other issue. When I do destroy these actors, it removes them from the folder they were in as well, which is annoying because I kind of keep my stuff selected and organized in my outliner, and that's completely messing everything up. So anyway, and then if you didn't catch it, my characters need a job history, just like in Final Fantasy Tactics. If they were a level 17 warrior, then a level 12 mage, and then a level 18 whatever bard, right? All of that matters, and I don't want to lose that job history. So if I'm trying to save that, right, I can save anything off of my actor that I want and set that on the new one before I destroy the old one. Um, so anyway, all good stuff. Hopefully that all made sense, and I hope that I covered everything that you would need if you have already made or were making a game that had just 100 different actor types of the same, base type, and wanted to avoid that. And now we get to kind of see the pitfalls that we would have of not needing this. This is going to be an absolutely massive class in the end with take turn, every single type that we have. And is that good or bad? I actually think it's going to be fine. And there's honestly no way around it. There's no way that I can think of to have a nice, smart, small, if you're trying to do something large and have a bunch of different types, each of those individual ones that you created, if you made a Gengar, Charizard, Charmander, and so on, they're going to need their own take turn type. Uh, Partially in their case, they actually just need to hold on to 4 different move types, right? That's what Pokemon sort of has allowed in its design that is different than just my game in general. I don't have that. I hold on to a job history and hold on to abilities and perks and all sorts of stuff so that my characters can grow and they don't ever really lose anything. They only gain things. Whereas in Pokemon, you're constantly falling off and removing those moves. So that's actually where Pokemon would be totally different and wouldn't blow up into this massive type. All you would need is where's my spells, right? So you would need, a spell table. So let's go take a look at, actually, let's look at my data tables. By the way, if you never use collections, highly recommend you make local collections. So I keep all of my data tables here, right? So we would have a list of spells, and if I were making a Pokemon game, every single spell or every single move that a Pokemon could ever use could all be in this one table. And I could even say, hey, only certain classes can use this type, only ghost types can use this move, or only these Pokemon can use this move. And I could actually say both, right? And have it check, right? So if I tried to assign a move to a Pokemon, right, from the TMs, it could look and say, are you this Pokemon type specifically? Only a Gengar, Charizard, or Charmander can use this, and check, uh, and refuse, and then say, well, actually, this move, um, y- you know, uh, yeah, this move can be used by these types, ghost types and fire types, and have these sort of checks within the move. Anyway, so you kind of get it. Hopefully, you understand. And I made clear how you could make a data table of spells, a data table of units. Let's look at level up info for just one more interesting example, I think. So what I want to do is when a noob, this is a terrible way to do it, by the way. There's got to be a better way, and I haven't come up with one yet. So if you've got one, tell me in the comments. So what I want to do is say when a noob goes from 1 to 2, right? They come in here and they get 1 strength point in this case, and when they go from 2 to 3, they get whatever it may be. They actually get a new spell to level up. They don't get any new stats, and so on and so forth. I feel like this table is going to be so insanely long. Um, it's really going to suck, but at the same time, if I change what they do from 2 to 3, it doesn't really affect 3 to 4. They just kind of got that at 2 to 3, and I can kind of keep doing that. If anybody has a better way to design level ups, that is manageable, let me know. Of course, I could do something where we just calculate, okay, you get um, one strength and one HP through level 10, and then after level 10, whatever. And then I'd say, oh, you're level 47. Well, let's do these quick calculations and stuff. I wouldn't need this massive table and all of this, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know a good way to do that and hang on to everything. Um, and then, do perks have anything really interesting? Perks are a weird one. And then in my game, perks are something that sort of um, define a few things, right? What job gets them? Just the name in general, because they're unique. I could make this a list of jobs, right? But then I would need a list of job like level pairs. Anyway, I feel like I'm gonna ramble really hard at this point. I should really just make like an entire like hour-long video that goes through how I made this entire game so far, and what happens, and maybe that's like an example of like how like code design and game design works at the coding level, right? Not game design figuring out what the game should do and could do, but more like the design of the code of the game and how different blocks of code and things are going to interact with each other. So yeah, we're getting really technical now, and it's getting really odd. Because I tried to keep this discreet, but I don't think I did a good job. So, anyway, tell me what you guys think.